So kia ora koutou, everyone. Welcome to this session. I'm going to kick it off now. We've just gone past 7 o'clock. People may jump in during the call. Hopefully that won't be too disruptive if they do. I'm going to run through a short presentation, just kind of outlining the new programs and how it will affect you guys directly, whether you're an apprentice or an employer. And then we'll take some questions at the end. If you've got a question as we go through, you can either type it into the chat or interrupt me, unmute yourself, and ask the question. I'm happy to take them as we go through. Cool. So the WDC have worked with industry to develop an updated version of the New Zealand certificates for plumbing, gas fitting and drain laying. Part of that process was developing new unit standards or revising existing unit standards. So this is our version, ICE's version of that, of a program that meets that new updated qualification. And you've been invited to this meeting because you are going to be transferred into it. You have basically started in it, or you have an apprentice as, who is in the new program or entering into the new program. So it's probably good to start with the benefits of being in the new one, particularly for the people that have been transferred, so they signed up to version 3. Technically, everyone is signed up to the previous version at the moment because our NZQA approvals for the combined programs only came through a week ago. So we've still got to set up the paperwork to formally transfer people over. That should be fairly straightforward, and basically signing a piece of paper saying we are moving you into this program from the other one. So it should be fairly seamless. We're in the process of getting that up and ready to put in front of people. But for all intents and purposes, we have shifted people across into the new resources and have provided access from last week. So the benefits, overall, the duration of the programs is shorter. So they have less credits, and the time frame to complete the programs is shorter. So, for example, if you were doing plumbing and drain laying, currently it's a 4-year program. In the new program, potentially it could be achieved in 3 years. It may travel over into the 4th year, but most people should complete it in about 3.5 years. The other big benefit is that all practical assessments now have on-job assessment opportunity, and the greater the uptake of that, potentially the shorter the duration becomes as well for an apprentice. What it means is that people that are doing something every day, like you're regularly installing sanitary fixtures, so you're doing bathroom renovations, you're installing the fixtures, it's sort of the work that you do. You won't have to come into the Polytech and be assessed against that in a mocked up situation, because which makes sense. If you're doing it, you're competent. You can display that competency by gathering evidence. You can have a verifier confirm that you've done it competently, correctly, etc. You don't need to come in for that assessment. So that will ultimately provide more flexibility in the program's design. The new program structure is designed with an increased training focus. So the feedback from our trainees and employers from previous versions of the qualification are that it's assessment focused, but doesn't actually provide enough training opportunity to prepare people for assessment if they're not already doing that work on job. So, for example, if you're doing, if the assessment is on solar systems, not a lot of people may have actual workplace exposure to that. So that unit's still in the current program and in the new program. So what the redesign will ensure is that there'll be a dedicated training block covering that content, supporting people through the theory part and the theory assessment before they do a practical assessment block. And if they actually do the work on job, they've got that option as well. So they can complete it on job and they just come for the practical assessment that they require. But they've had pre-exposure, including practical and theory, a run through, if you like, where they've got the opportunity to ask questions and get feedback from tutors. So the tutors aren't having to be the assessor, the tutor, all at the same time. There's a clear differentiation between it. So there's a training block where the tutor is there to support, assist you, provide you with information, answer your questions, and then there'll be the assessment block where you're there for a practical assessment. That's it. So as part of the redesign, new resources have been developed. They've been developed specifically against the updated assessments, which have been written to meet the latest unit standard requirements. So everything is better aligned than it has been historically, where we'd previously inherited the national resources developed by the ITO at the time, which happened to be the skills ITO. And some of the content was developed in isolation, so it didn't necessarily cover all the bases of the assessment. So the redesign has meant that we've revisited it, we've started from scratch, we've developed the assessment to meet the unit standard, we've had that approved by the Workforce Development Council, and then we've developed the resource to support that. So what else is new? So there's new enrollment options. So if you're a new apprentice or signing up a new apprentice, currently there's previously only been drain laying, plumbing drain laying, and plumbing, gas and drain laying. So now you'd be able, potentially a new apprentice could enter into each trade independently. So you could do plumbing, gas fitting, drain laying, plumbing, gas fitting, plumbing, drain laying, or plumbing, gas fitting and drain laying, which also means that if we have some people who are already qualified but they're trying to pick up or they wish to pick up an additional ticket they weren't previously catered for. Now if you're a registered or a certified plumber but you never did drain laying at the time, you've now got that option to pick that up with less hassle, if you like, or if you were a drain layer and you wanted to pick up plumbing. As part of the change to the qualification, it now requires that a certifier is in the business or is prepared to certify the trainee for the program that they're entering into. So previously the default was a plumbing drain laying program and some apprentices did not have a drain laying certifier. But because there was no plumbing only option, they were entered into that qualification. It may affect a couple of people on this call, possibly, or in the program. So if they're unable to get a drain laying certifier, for example, they would have to change their enrolment to plumbing only, or possibly plumbing gas if the business had a gas fitter. And that's been a directive from industry and from the WDC that people should be actually practicing the qualification in the workplace, not just signing up to do it, even without any practical experience. The practical assessments completed as on-job assessments must be verified, so every practical assessment completed as an on-job will require a verifier, and I'll go into what the requirements are of that further in the slideshow. Drain laying now has an optional strand for on-site wastewater treatment or installation of septic systems. So people can only enter into that optional strand if they're actually doing that type of work in the workplace. Training blocks at ICE are changing from predominantly a 1-week block to a 2-week block. The only exception will be the drain laying theory block, which remains at 1 week. Practical assessment blocks that will follow on from those, if required, will be a 1 week block or less. So if there was 4 units that were covered in a practical assessment block, but you did 2 of those, achieved 2 of those on job beforehand, you would only come in to complete the remaining 2 units. So your duration that you need to spend at that block may only be 2 or 3 days. So that's quite a significant change to how it's operated. So just a quick overview of the qualifications. So the qualifications remain at level 4. There's three qualifications: plumbing, gas fitting and drain laying, New Zealand certificates, with 6 program options that lead to one or more of those qualifications. This year we have now launched the online component of the course, and at the end of this month we're running the first version 4 of the new program block courses, the induction blocks. So moving forward, for people that have already signed up, this won't be quite as relevant, but moving forward, the sign-up process will be our training advisor will meet with the employer and the apprentice, outline what will happen in the framework of the program, discuss what's appropriate in terms of enrolment, the type of work that you're undertaking, and which practical on-job units you are likely to or potentially going to be able to complete in the workplace. Once enrolled, the first sort of component is to attend the first aid, confined space and working at heights courses. So that planning will happen with our office team, and they'll work in with your TA to make the bookings. Currently they're completed in public courses that ICE pay for as part of your program. Once enrolled, we will send out a welcome pack with the handbook and some other resources in it, and you'll gain access to the learning management system, so the online portion of the course. That's been revised. So there is now 2 courses. There's an on-job specific one, which has the on-job assessments, and the theory course currently with the year 1 content in it. In year 1, there's 11 theory units. 4 of those are self-directed, depending on your program. There may be 3, and 7 are going to be completed as part of the induction block. So there'll be some additional training, as well as sitting those assessments in a supported environment. Each of these assessments has an e-learning package, so an electronic pre-learning package to work through independently. So I would encourage any apprentice to jump into those courses, make sure your login access is resolved, and start having a look at those e-learning packages before you attend the block. It's quite important. The induction block. So the purpose of the induction block is to build people's technical competency, develop practical skills, reinforce theoretical knowledge, cover best practice for industry. Basically what we're looking to do is cover all the sort of foundation skills, core kind of underlying knowledge, things like line level gradient, working with building code documents, understanding how they work, the regulatory framework, a lot of that sort of covered in these crossover generic units, and preparing people for the technical block. So when we get to year 2 and you're in a technical plumbing block or a drain laying block, you've got the building blocks and you can dive straight into it, and start getting into the technical specifics of each topic. So we'll incorporate a practical component So that will happen as part of it. So it won't just be a 2-week theory marathon. That would be quite painful. It will be split up. So most days will be sort of a 50-50 mixture of building practical skills, doing stuff that you may not always have exposure to in a learning environment, and also covering the theory component. So year one unit standards, you've got all the safety modules, all the safety units, the online self-directed topics, and the block course topics. This one's not particularly relevant to this audience. For those that have started the program earlier, so you may have been a late 2024 sign up or started in January, have made some progress. The work that you've done previously in Skills Bank will still cross over. So if you've completed a unit standard, we've provided a 2-week window with continued access to complete any work you've got in progress. It has to be passed for it to carry across into the new program. So probably about a week left on that access. If there's an issue post that time frame and you lose access, you're only access to the new LMS, then we can put an extension on that as well, if you are 95% there on completing an assessment. There are some units that drop out of the new program, so those units are expiring or no longer, they haven't been picked up and put into the new program by the WDC. So there's a few there that drop off, but most of year one has got quite a big overlap. This is just a list of the on-job unit standards. So out of the on-job unit standards, yeah, there's a mixture of quite specific ones and then the more general things. So for example, in plumbing, maintain hot and cold water supply systems, installing sanitary fixtures, foul water systems, sanitary fixtures. So they're things that, someone working a plumber over the course of 2 to 3 years, they're going to be doing that fairly regularly. Each unit requires more than one job worth of evidence, typically. So usually they might have 2 or 3 things. Sometimes the jobs can overlap. So you might maintain something, but you're also making a repair, and that is another piece of evidence. Each one is spelled out in the online activity in terms of what is required for evidence, and we'll take a look at that near the end. Expectation would be that probably that people should be able to achieve at least 3 on jobs out of the list if they're entering into that qualification. But which ones suit you and fit your business and the work that you're doing is really over to you. It may require a level of support, or it will require a level of support from the employer, and particularly the ICE approved verifier, who will be the one effectively signing off that the work was done compliantly. The assessor will be a separate person, and they will review it and sign off the unit standard is complete, provided all the requirements have been met. So from 2026, we'll move into delivering year 2 of the program, where we'll be undertaking the specific technical blocks. So they will be really focused on training. Again, they will cover the theory content for that year, and they'll prepare people for the practical assessment block that would follow that. So the practical activities that will be incorporated in one will support the theory learning, so the learning becomes more holistic and natural, and as people gain experience, but it will also prepare people for the practical assessment if they require it. The blocks are qualification specific, so there's no overlap between a drain laying block a plumbing block, and a gas fitting block outside of year one. In year one, the units are common to all three qualifications, and everyone will converge into the one induction block. We'll look to schedule the practical assessment block within 6 months of the technical training block, so the learning is still fresh if you do need to come in for an assessment. But again, you'll have the option to complete those units on job. That's the year 2 content by program. If you're doing combined program, if you're doing plumbing, gas and draining all together, you wouldn't have to complete all of that in 1 year. Gas pushes out into the following year, so it starts effectively in year 3, although you would have access to the on-job component right from year 1. Year 3, so year 3 is a bit like a repeat of year 2. It's the more specific and technical content for each trade. So at this point, drain laying completes in year 2. It's a shorter 2-year program, and regardless of the program option, the drain laying component will be completed within 2 years. So year 3 is the more advanced and specific topics for plumbing and gas fitting. Again, same format, 2-week training block that supports the completion of the theory units and prepares people for the practical assessment block. So that's the content in year 3. So you can see, for example, in plumbing, the practical assessment that falls out of that is backflow, foul water systems, sanitary systems, solid fuel heaters. So it's not amazingly technically difficult, but it's stuff that maybe not every business does all the time. But if you were doing it regularly, then you could pick up and complete those on-job units in an odd-job situation, and then just come in for the bit that you don't get exposure to. But everyone is going to get the same core training. So everyone is going to get the same theory training. They're going to get the same practical training exposure, which will mean an ICE graduate will be relatively consistent in their level of competency and knowledge, which will help prepare them for the PGD exams and for industry in general. So this is the new journey map. So there's one for each program option. Probably takes a little bit of interpretation. Basically, once the enrollment process happens, you will have access to the online learning and the e-learning training material. You'll be scheduled to the health and safety courses with a subcontracted provider. And you'll come in and attend an induction training block, 2-week block, that will cover your remainder of your year 1 theory content and prepare you for future years. Year 2, when you've completed year 1 requirements, you'll shift into year 2. You get access to all the year 2 online learning and any self-directed online assessments in year 2. I've tried to keep those to a minimum, so the actual assessment component is supported by a block. You then get allocated to a training block where you'll have a 2-week training block which will incorporate theory and practical training. Post that, there'll be an assessment block if you require it, which will cover off the practical assessment that's deemed to happen in year 2 that will correspond with the topics covered in the training block. Once year 2 components are complete, you shift into year 3. Again, you've got access to the online learning component and any self-directed theory topics. And then you'll come in, you do the advanced technical training block, an assessment block if required following that. And once you've passed your exam, you've now completed the program. Gas fitting is effectively the same as plumbing with gas as the topic. Drain laying's a shorter program. It's got less credits, so that will get all wrapped up within 2 years. What we are looking at doing is running drain laying only tailored induction blocks, so we can incorporate more of the practical component for drain laying in that initial 2 week section. But people doing a combined program, there will be a drain laying component to the induction block practical. And the theory block will be, because it's shorter, will be more it will be more theory focused, but there is some opportunity for a bit of a run through on the practical, so people are still prepared for it if they're not going to be able to achieve it on job. Combined programs, basically you're running the same thing together, you're just doing twice as many blocks. What may happen is the assessment block may push over into the following year. We would still look to complete it within 6 months of the block. So what may happen is if you attended the gas fitting training block first, you probably have opportunity to come to a gas fitting assessment block. And then if you did the plumbing block, the later part of the year, the assessment block, but maybe the first thing you do in the corresponding year from a calendar year perspective. But once you've completed the components of a year, what's deemed to be within the year, the academic year, you would shift into the corresponding year. So the duration of the programs is actually written flexible. So the duration, for example, this program is approved as 3 to 4 years, with the expectation that most would do it within 3.5. Plumbing and drain laying, again, it's a bit of a combination of the two. Should be achievable within 3 to 3.5 years. The combined one, if you are undertaking all three, does push the start of the training component of the gas out. So that would start in year 3, because in year 2 you're undertaking the plumbing, drain laying, and wrapping that part of it up. But for all of these, the on-job access to the on-job assessments will happen at the entry point. Sorry, the slide doesn't transfer well, particularly well. It doesn't really fit vertically, so I've tried to put it sideways. But basically, if you're doing that combined program with all three, this is what the time off job would look like. So in year 1, you've got health and safety split up into 3 2-day courses, but effectively a week's worth, and the 2-week induction block. So year 1 is basically 3 weeks out of work, attending training. Year 2, it obviously depends on your program, but if you're doing a combined program of all three, would be between 3 to 4 weeks. So it would depend how much of the training on job you could undertake in the workplace and how many days you would need to attend an assessment course. If you could do very little, expect that you would need to come in for a full week to complete that. Year 3, now this block may happen in year 2 possibly, but we'd look to cap a person's attendance off job at probably a maximum of 5 weeks, just so it's not impacting employers too much. So again, there'd be up to 4 weeks of training with 1 week of assessment block. Year 4 would be similar. So 2 weeks of training, it's just the gas component now, and a couple of weeks of the assessment blocks. In year 5, it's the more technical gas assessment blocks. Again, it will depend how much is completed on job. There's quite a bit in that one, so it may actually require, if people were unable to achieve a lot on job, may require 2 separate 1-week blocks to get through all the content. So with this on-job component kind of ramping up in these programs, the verifier component takes on I guess a more significant role. So the verifier must be ICE registered. That's the current process. So any existing verified ICE approved verifier will continue. What they need to do is make sure that the trainee is ready to undertake the assessment. So it shouldn't be the first time you're doing that type of job or work. You shouldn't be doing an assessment. So you should have had some pre-exposure to it, which could be assisting a tradesman doing the job. You now got the hang of it. You're going to gather evidence and put it towards an on-job assessment. So that's the sort of first thing. The next bit is there's this terminology, the level of performance, or meeting the level of performance. Basically, what that means is that the work is compliant, completed to a professional industry standard, and completed within an acceptable time frame. So what you would expect as a customer, your plumber comes in and does the job competently, correctly, and appropriately, is what we're measuring people against. There is a workplace verified book, updated one for this program, which will be sent out to employers that have trainees undertaking the program. We'll get that out to employers shortly. I've got a few questions, frequently asked questions, mostly that I've made up at this point, but happy to take other questions. So what qualifications does a workplace verifier require in this program? So for drain laying, they must be PGD registered at what would previously be known as a tradesman drain layer. The board has rejigged that, so it'd just be called a drain layer now, but a registered drain layer. For plumbing, it's the same, so they just need to be a tradesman plumbing with the current license. They could also, in both cases, be a certifier. For gas fitting, the WDC, Workforce Development Council, require that they are a certified gas fitter. So a registered gas fitter is unable to be a verifier for gas fitting work. Is the verifier also the assessor? No, they're not. They might feel like that's their role, but it's not the role. There is a clear difference. So the verifier is basically the person on site, the eyes on site. They look at the work, they make sure they're comfortable with it, just like if you you take on an employee, you're checking that they're doing it how you want them to do it. Initially, they may be working closely in with their employer or a tradesman employed by the employer until they're at a level of competence that they're let loose in undertaking the work independently, and the level of oversight will gradually reduce as you gain more and more confidence in their ability and they gain more experience. So a similar situation. So the verifier is basically someone who is there, works with the trainee. They'll need to see the work, but they don't need to be there for the whole duration of them doing the job, standing around watching them do it. But they should check in, check on the work, make sure they're comfortable with it, and then they'll sign a form that says, yes, he's done X, Y, Z, and that becomes the evidence that it's been verified. All that evidence, photos, the verifier sheet, maybe a plan or some other piece of evidence gets uploaded into the LMS and is viewed by the ICE assessor, who ultimately makes the call whether the trainee passes or not. All ICE assessors have to be a certified person in the specific trade they're assessing, and they have to have the assessor unit standard as a minimum. For a tutor, they may also have a training, adult education qualification as well. They'll be working towards one. Can a trainee pick up or drop the optional drain laying strand? Yes, there'll be a facility for people to do that. So if you thought you were going to be able to achieve it, it's sign up. So you signed into that program and found out they're actually not getting any of that type of work anymore, or someone changes business, employer, etc., there will be a facility to change your enrolment and drop the optional strand. Likewise, if you weren't doing it at the time, but suddenly you've taken on a new contract and the trainee has the opportunity to pick it up, then that could be tacked on while they're still a trainee. Is there any questions at this point? If not, I'm going to jump into the LMS and thanks. A question for Ross in the chat. Have we signed into the new program? Ross, if you're on this call, effectively we're going to transfer you into the new program. So your training advisor will be in touch. We are just finalising the process. I expect by the end of this month we will have it resolved and set up in our systems, and we can then get in touch and move people into the new program formally. Riley's coming up with a question here. So the new program, the online component, which includes the new e-learning packages that support the assessments, is set up in our new LMS, the Learning Hive. So if you were previously signed to PGD or PD, you would have initially be given access to Skills Bank, and you'll still have that probably for another week. And you would have been in what we call the version 3 program. You'll only see one program, so you may be familiar with this access. So that access will close off, and you should have received information on how to access the Learning Hive plus login details. They will be slightly different than your previous Skills Bank details, and you should be forced to update and create a new password when you first log in. When you log in, you'll just see the 2 courses you have access to, which is this one, the on-job course, and this one, the combined course. So I'll just jump into there now. Turn to the student view. So the first thing that you need to do, and the same applies to the older programs as well, is complete the pre-assessment declaration. When you've done that, all the content that you've got access to currently will appear, and you can view everything. So that's the first step. Complete that. It'll tell you when you've completed it. You've got this information bar there you can hide away if you don't like it. The general program information is there. Yes, they were sent in an email, Riley. If you don't have access to them or you haven't seen it, I will put my email in the chat and you can get in touch with me. ICE support can also do it. Normally, the ICE support team do password resets and reset people's access. I did send out an email today, so you could reply to that email. That was from my personal work email. I've also just responded in the chat with my email. So if you've got any issues around access, I can resolve those for you. So we've got the overall resources there, the new handbook, etc. What we've done is we've set them up so they're in the same format as a quiz. Oh, I'm in the theory course, sorry. So this is the theory course. I'll get to the on-job one in a sec. So you've got the pre-learning. So you've got that. So much for my time frame. Um, so each unit standard has got its own learning content. It's designed so it's got some interactive type components in it. So it's not just the information dump. Um, and obviously, it varies a little bit between each unit and the topics. But there are some activities to make it a little bit more interactive that you can work through, like this funny little one we've got here. Doesn't like me. Back to that one. And they incorporate some knowledge checks. So they're kind of in line with the questions in the assessment. It follows the same sequence in terms of how it's kind of structured, which follows the assessment sequence. So it should make it more logical as you're working through it. You're actually doing the assessment. You can always dive back into the learning component and look up a topic area. So if there's something specific you didn't quite get, couldn't remember it, you can go back in. You can have access to the pre-learning and the assessment at the same time, and it will tell you how you went on the practice questions as well. For the self-directed ones, you will need to work right through this, ticking off all the boxes as you go through it to to be awarded effectively access to the assessment. So work through that at your own pace. When you're at the end and you've completed it, the assessment will pop up for you and you can enter that. For the ones that are part of the induction block, they'll be restricted, so you have access to all the pre-learning, and you'll get a code when you attend the block that you'll type in, and that will give you access to the assessment. So the assessor the tutor has a little bit of control around it, and people will be progressing at the sort of a similar rate of progress, rather than we have people come in that have done 10 things and others that haven't done anything. The assessment, a blurb about it, but the assessment structure is like this, similar to if you've looked at the previous ones in one of the other platforms. You type your answer in. Where possible, we've used some self-marking and multi-choice questions as well. This one's got a fair few. When you've completed it, click Finish Attempt. If you're on the last page, that will sort of pop up automatically. It will tell you if you haven't answered it, so obviously you might want to go back and put an answer in there, revise the learning content. Submit all and finish. So it sort of gives you a warning. If you haven't responded to it, it will automatically come up red. If it's a self-marked question, it will mark it. If you've got it right and it's self-marked, it will come up green. If it needs marking, it will stay grey until it's been marked by the assessor. Once they've marked it, you can review it, see where you went wrong, look for any feedback, and make your subsequent attempt to complete it. I'll just jump into the on-job course quickly here. So again, just sort of the general information. The on-job is set up using the same format as the theory assessments because it makes it easier to manage, and in terms of if there's a follow-up attempt, also means that the assessor can give feedback specific to each component of it rather than as a whole or one big upload. So it's important to go through the information. You can navigate back and forwards through it, and because it's potentially multiple jobs across an extended time frame, you can submit stuff. You might do, okay, I've done a roof penetration today. I'm going to gather all that evidence. I'm now going to go and upload it, get all my information together. But I've still got 3 other tasks I have to do, and I might not do those. I might do those over the next 6 months. So you should be building up potentially multiple on jobs as you're doing the work and working through it, but not actually submitting it until you've completed all the components. So uploading information is pretty easy. You'll typically have a text box. You can give a description of what you were doing. And you can just drag and drop files. You can open this on your mobile phone and upload documents from there as well. You can choose a file like so. So you can go, okay, there's a nice picture of my new motorbike. And there it's there. There's basically any type of document you can think of can be uploaded. There's no restrictions around the file size, so it should be pretty open to you putting in what you need into there. So you might put in 3 or 4 photos, you might just put in 1 photo, you might upload a PDF document. But it's important to carefully read through the details, what's required for each part of it. In some cases, so that evidences can clearly be linked to you as the trainee, you'll have to have yourself in the shot to put you on site to say that it's your work, not someone else's. And obviously the verifiers sign off is an important part of that as well. So look out for that. Typically that's going to be in bold. So, inside, outside, in progress photos is probably the common sort of norm. And then you've got the verifier piece. The verifier component can be done online as an editable PDF, so you could send it to them. You could also print it off. Once we've finalised every single one, I might look to put them in a pack with tear-offs that you can just have a list of them and stick it in front of them. They can sign it, and then you just scan it and upload it. There's some mobile apps, Cam Scanner one, probably the best one. Adobe do one where you can just use your phone to scan a document, particularly a simple 1-page document like this, and upload that. Again, once you've completed all the requirements, make sure you submit it, and it's going to go in for marking. Once you've completed it, we'll tell you over here. So it'll tell you if you've got a grade, and it will tell you if you've got a passing grade. So if you've submitted it, this one will pop up. If you've passed the assessment, that one will pop up green to indicate you've completed it. Is there any follow-up questions? Riley, I can reset your password and send you an update directly if you like, if you can't track that email down. Cool. Yeah, I'll look you up and get onto that for you. Just put the link to the site in the chat in case anyone's missed it. But obviously you've got to have your login details, your username, which is typically it will be your email, your registered email with ICE, and the password, the temporary password that was sent to people as well. if anyone's got an issue in terms of access, yeah, get in touch with me or through ICE support, and we can resolve that pretty quickly. Cool. Well, if that is if there are no questions, I'm happy to wrap it up here. Thanks for joining. Appreciate you taking the time to join. Sorry, I went a little over schedule there. I was hoping to wrap it up a bit quicker, but I got a bit carried away. And I guess there is quite a bit to look through. It will take a little bit of familiarity to go through the content and get used to the LMS, but once you start digging into it, there's some really good resources in there. I think that ultimately it's going to be a better program that has better outcomes for apprentices moving forward. Thanks, Ethan. Any issues, everyone should actually have my email, so yeah, feel free to get in touch directly if need be. I'm happy to resolve any issues you may have. We will actually be running some road shows, with people still on, coming up from the end of the month at our campuses, for employers, particularly, but also potentially apprentices, in the evenings at 5:30. First one is going to kick off on the 31st in Dunedin, then Christchurch Tuesday, Otaki Wednesday, and Auckland on Thursday. So look out for those. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thanks, Martin.
Cheers, Richie.
See you, mate.
Catch ya. Thanks for joining. Sure, Ashley, I will. Yep. We're just work. So we haven't actually sent out the formal comms yet, but it's going to go out. It's going to go out in our general newsletter, just as kind of like heads up, and hoping to pin down the person who's going to send out the actual specific communication for each one tomorrow. So, but I will. I'll send you the details as a sort of preview. All good. Well, you don't have any questions? Awesome, mate. I'm going to jump off the call. Um, if you're happy. If you got any follow-up questions, just get in touch. Well, have a good night. Bye.